Hey guys, it's Krista here, and I am going to do my weekly reads, my roundup for the week, what I've been reading, and yeah, you guys know how it goes. I've been catching up on some review books this week. One book that I read right at the start of the week is a NetGalley book. It's called The Night She Disappeared by April Henry. It's coming out March 13th by Henry Holt and Company. And the story blurb says, KB drives a Mini Cooper. She also works part-time as a delivery girl at Pete's Pizza. One night, Kayla, another delivery girl, goes missing. To her horror, Gabby learns that the supposed kidnapper had asked if the girl in the Mini Cooper was working that night. Gaby can't move beyond the fact that Kayla's fate was really meant for her, and she becomes obsessed with finding Kayla. She teams up with Drew, who also works at Pete's. Together, they set out to prove that Kayla isn't dead and to find her before she is. It was different than anything I've read recently, which I thought was great. It was only 240 pages, and I read right through it. It was a very fast read, and it's set up differently than just a normal novel. The book starts out being from Drew's perspective, and he is going over what happened that night that Kayla disappeared, the guy calling on the phone, and how it was just a normal order and everything happened just fine. And then it jumps around from perspective. So we get Gaby's perspective and Drew's perspective. We get the policeman's interrogations and the questioning and the search warrants and all of that. And then we also get to go into Kayla's parents. As well as Gaby's parents too. So we get to go into some of the minds of the parents as well, and some of the process that they're going through. Gaby's mom not wanting her to work at the pizza place anymore, and Kayla's parents dealing with psychics and media and things that are going on her end of the deal. But what I found most interesting about this is that it unravels like a TV show or a movie would. You know, it starts off with Drew and Kayla working that night, and Drew thinking about how he didn't know it was different than any other order and how guilty he feels for sending Kayla on the run. And then it goes into Gaby learning about what happened and how maybe she was the one that was supposed to have been taken, and then it goes into starting with the police investigations and what's going on there. You really get put into the whole involvement of what is going on in the story, and I really enjoyed it. And it was a really fast-paced read. It's a great mystery thriller suspense novel, and I enjoyed the change from the books that I've been reading recently. You know, I read a lot of fantasy and supernatural stuff, so I thought this was a great change of pace, and I really enjoyed the book. And it's coming out next week, so you guys should definitely check that one out. And I really enjoyed this one too. I thought it was so cute. It's called Casey Barnes' Eponymous, and it says it's 3 weeks into the school year when music junkie Casey Barnes gets a second chance with her mysterious, heartbreaking ex-boyfriend. She comes up with a plan to win him back, but it soon spins out of control as rivalries, revelations about him, and music itself all start to collide. For Casey, the newfound attention means learning the difference between wanting center stage and actually being in it. And this one is available now. It's only 220 pages. And I thought it was so cute and so fun. What I love most about the story was the main character. Casey is, I don't know, she is so funny. She cheats off a test. She dresses in this punk rock style. You know, she kind of got greasy hair. And I think what spoke to me most was that I could really, when it comes to boys and trying to relate and stuff that you're interested in and trying to find interest with other people, I could totally relate with that stuff. I loved her character. It reminded me so much of some of my high school years and dealing with boys. The main character appealed to me and what she was going through and her likes and just, you know, trying to get through the school year, just trying to tough it out and get through it. And I thought that was amazing, and I really think it's a cute story. And lots of stuff with music. She plays in a band, and they decide to. There's a new boy in school, and she notices that he carries around drumsticks in his back pocket. And, eventually they start talking and decide to, be in a group and play music together and just mess around. And then they want to do the talent show at school, and there's always the bad girl. When you're fighting over a boy, it's crazy. Crazy. That just reminds me so much of high school. So. The other book I read is The Raft by S.A. Bodeen. This is a NetGalley book, and it actually doesn't even come out until August, so, I mean, I could talk about it, but I don't know if you guys are going to remember anything about it. But anyway, it's about a girl who, she lives on an island called Midway, and it's really known for the nature preserve, and there's not a lot of kids. She doesn't have, like, a normal school. She doesn't have internet all the time or a phone or anything. So she goes into Hawaii to visit with her aunt. Now, Roby's 15 years old, and so she goes back and forth to these islands, Midway and Hawaii. One of these days she goes on the airplane to go back home, and there's a storm. She ends up getting stranded in a raft in the ocean and has to survive until either people rescue her or she dies. Something that I noticed was a main focus of the story, because she is raised on a nature preserve, that she pays attention to a lot of the stuff in nature, animals, their behaviors, the birds, and things going on. And this book is really like a lot like Castaway with Tom Hanks, except for it's a girl, a teenage girl trying to survive out there. And the next book I read is actually the third in a series, and it is called Traitor in the Tunnel by Y.S. Lee. This is part of the Agency series, and I don't want to talk too much about it, but what I will say is that so far this is my favorite book of the series, and I loved all the characters in this one. I thought they fit the story well. I loved the pacing of it, and I think, like I said, I think this is my favorite one, and did struggle with this series at the beginning. I'm not a huge historical reader. I mean, I do read historical novels, but when it comes to young adult historical, I've had a really hard time getting into those stories for some reason. The pacing is just off for me, and I've been trying to get into a lot more. And this one, I'm really glad that I kind of stuck with this series, because now it's actually getting to something that I like and I appreciate, and the more development of the characters and things going on. And so this one was a 4-star for me. I liked it, and I'm not going to say any more because of spoilers. Okay, the other one was another self-published novel that I read, and it is called Intangible by Meyers. It says, twins Sarah and Luke Rain have a well-kept secret. She heals with the touch of her hand. He sees the future. All their lives, they've helped those in need on the sly. They've always thought of their abilities as being a gift. Then Luke has a vision that Sarah is killed. That gift they've always cherished begins to feel an awful lot like a curse. Because the thing about Luke's ability, he's always right, and he can't do anything about it. So what I found really intriguing about this novel is that it's not just, just magic and stuff going on here. There's this whole concept behind the scenes of what's going on. And it involves other creatures in the world. There's vampires, and there's some talk of goblins and fairies and stuff like that. But for some reason, the only thing that I really latched onto in this story was Sarah and her ability to heal. And there's a huge... most of the plot is revolving around the fact that she has started to heal vampires into becoming human again. So she's pissed off the vampire world and the leaders that don't want her out healing the vampires, because they're needed, to fight and to be the vampire society, and they were made a vampire for a reason. And so she's kind of ticked off this vampire society, and I really love it. And I just was so gripped by this whole idea of her healing the vampires, and how much that could really affect a whole world when you start disrupting the system that they have going. So I was kind of just stuck on that whole idea. Even though there's tons more happening in the book, the thing that really got me kept reading was Sarah and the vampires. I also like the fact that Sarah and Luke are twins, and so they both have powers, and maybe that Sarah wasn't meant to be born with powers, that it was just Luke that was supposed to have them, and so this weird kind of bond is going between them. And I like the family, the characters that are brought into the story were all pretty great and exciting, and the big plot fight scenes and all of that happens. So I really liked Luke and Sarah and the vampires, and the whole reaction of the world on what Sarah can be doing to cause such a disruption to the way that things are. I gave that one 4 stars. So the next book I read was a self-published book. It's called The Earthquake Machine, and it's by Pauline Lowry. And this one I was pulled into because I haven't really read a lot about Spanish or Mexican cultures in young adult reading. I've read a couple, but this one, it kind of pulled me in. I fast learned that this is an adult novel, not a young adult novel, which is just fine. I read a lot of adult novels as well. This one is described as the earthquake machine tells the story of 14-year-old Rhonda. On the outside, everything looks perfect in Rhonda's world, but at home, Rhonda has to deal with a manipulative father who keeps her mentally ill mother hooked on pharmaceuticals. The only reliable person in Rhonda's life is her family's Mexican yardman, Jesus. But when the INS deports Jesus back to his home state of, and I don't know how to pronounce that, Oaxaca, I don't know. Rhonda is left alone with her increasingly painful family situation. Determined to find her friend Jesus, Rhonda seizes an opportunity to run away during a camping trip with friends. She swims to the Mexican side of the Rio Grande and makes her way to the border town of Boquillas, Mexico. There, a peyote-addled bartender convinces her she won't be safe traveling alone into the country's interior, so the bartender helps Rhonda cut her hair and assume the identity of a Mexican boy named Angel. She then sends off on a burro across the desert to find her friend Jesus. Thus begins a wild adventure that explores the borders between the United States and Mexico, adolescence and adulthood, male and female, English, Spanish, and adult coming of age. It was brought to me as a young adult novel, but I highly disagree. I do not think that this is a young adult novel because of some of the situations that the girl gets into are very adult. There is a lot of sexual language in here, and it's not just, oh, the girl had sex. I mean, it's very verbal, descriptive, detailed information that I felt uncomfortable with. So I would not recommend it to young adults unless you're very mature and can handle the more explicit content. And it wasn't, I mean, it's not just the sex. I mean, it's a 14-year-old girl traveling into a brand new country that she's never been into before on her own, trying to figure out her way around Mexico. And, you know, Mexico is not really a safe place to be, especially for a 14-year-old girl, even if she's dressing as a boy. So there are some very serious things that happen in this book. The story starts out with mentally, with her mother. I mean, she's sick. She has some mental issues. But the mother's not the only one with issues. The dad has some very disturbing issues as well. I would, so although that this one didn't stick with me personally, it is getting a lot of really great reviews on Amazon and on Goodreads. So if you're interested in reading something a little bit more mature and intense and gritty, because that's exactly what it is. It's dark and gritty. So if you guys are into reading something more mature like that, or, you know, adult, you want to put an adult book into your reading schedule, go ahead and check it out. Also, I did notice that on YA Book Reads, there is a story behind the story with the author up on their website. If you guys want to go check them out at yabookreads.com. I got to learn a little bit more about the author and why she wrote the story and some of the things that she wanted to say. So you guys should check that out. It's a great little meme thing that they have going on over there. But that's it for my weekly reads. I'm still trying to get through Archon, Sabrina Benulis. This week I intend on reading the 2 Ivy books by Laura Kuntz and somebody else. That's all I can think about for now. So thanks for watching, guys. Thanks for stopping by. And I will talk to you soon. Bye.